demographics are absolutely fascinating because they do drive a lot of social changes. They drive a lot of what our government does when it comes to an elderly population. We need more healthcare, for instance. We've got a younger population having more children. We need more schools. There are huge impacts on everybody in this country in terms of the services, in terms of our taxes, in terms of what we expect the government to do, and in fact also our culture as well from demographic changes. And there's no doubt at all these latest census results, they come out in sort of drips and drabs from the Office for National Statistics, show major changes. Let's talk first of all the one about religion. Christians down to a minority of the population, 46%. Is that down to people no longer being religious at all? Is it down to people no longer feeling they need to say they're religious when perhaps 10, 20 years ago they would have felt they had to? Or is it down to other religions being on the rise?
It's not very much down to other religions being on the rise, because the rise in non-Christian religions has been pretty modest, a percentage point or two for Islam and almost unnoticeable for other religions. It's not even individuals necessarily changing their religious convictions, but to a very large extent, it's the death since the last census of a large cohort who perhaps unthinkingly and perhaps reflectively, that's open to question, considered themselves Christian, and the growth in a younger population who undoubtedly have not had that education at school where they have thought Christianity is the core religion, that's the default religion, and we'll learn a little bit about other religions. So I think it's really a change of generations where Christianity as the default option seems to have ceased to be the case.
If you're not really religious, you used to put down C of E because, well, that's what you were raised in. You may have been, taken to church. You'd have your wedding in a church. Partly also, again, remember, the only nice places to get married were churches for many years.
Correct.
So as opposed to, a dingy-looking register office.
Or maybe your parents would have baptised you unthinkingly or thinkingly, but perhaps just as a matter of social custom in a way they won't have done. They would have done perhaps 40 or 50 years ago and not 10 or 20.
I might have expected you to do it now. Now that expectation has gone. So there's no doubt at all, though, our culture, our history, our values, our laws, huge parts of our nation's identity and our British identity are basically based on Christian values, are they not, though? So even though someone like me is raised an atheist and lives a life as an atheist, I still, a lot of my values, my expectations, my cultural norms will be still based on the teachings of the Christian church.
Well, this is a question a little beyond the realm of demography.
True.
It's a more general cultural question, but I agree that we are a profoundly Christian country. That is our history. Those are our origins. And then there's a very interesting question about if that goes, how much does it matter? What changes? Do we just become a more secular country, but in many ways the same? Or are we losing a rootedness in something very profound, which is going to have very profound
And that does have impacts, doesn't it? Let's talk about the ethnicity issue as well. I mean, I do think that if you looked at, say, adverts, or if you looked at some TV screens and what you see on telly generally, you would probably think that we had roughly a third ethnic minority population in this country, or more than that already. Now, 2/3 of Londoners are from ethnic minority backgrounds, but actually across the board, across the country, it's only 81.7% that are 81.7% are white, down from 86% in 2011. I'm actually surprised that we've seen only that small rise in ethnic minority populations. But I think that's because cities, we may see it an awful lot, but we don't see it in large other parts of the country. Does that matter? Does that signify anything about our nation? And where is that change in ethnicity coming from? Is it immigration? Is it birth rates in different communities? What's going on?
Well, I think, like the religion question, it undoubtedly does matter. We're supposed to celebrate our heritages. We're supposed to think about where our ancestors come from. There's much more stress on that than when I was growing up as the child of immigrant parents. I don't have a single ancestor born in this country. I'm not a Christian. And yet I think I was very much encouraged to affiliate to what in German would be called a Leitkultur, the leading culture of the country. Today, I think rather than that, we celebrate difference. And I think that's a fact. Whether it's a good fact or a bad fact is another question. I think I'm particularly concerned about the fact that there is a woke ideology, which means that rather than celebrating the core culture, we denigrate it. And I think that has a very bad effect on society.
I couldn't agree with you more. I find it fascinating. I don't think, diversity or difference is anything inherently wrong with it, but I also don't think there's anything inherently good with it either. And that's where we get into that interesting debate, don't we? Graham, you represent 100,000 evangelical churches and ministries, people attending evangelical churches and ministries across the UK. This statistic that for the first time officially, census data shows there are fewer than half the people in this country say that they have an affinity with Christianity. Do you think that's significant? Does it matter?
I think it matters in the sense that I'm obviously a Christian, so I think people getting to know the Christian message and getting to know Christ and being able to celebrate Christmas with a kind of understanding what happened, I think that matters. Whether it's sort of significant, obviously psychologically it's significant going below 50%, but I think as your colleague in the studio there said, I think it's probably more about people willing to or not willing, no longer thinking they have to say they're Christian because it's a cultural marker. It's no longer a cultural marker. It's more of a personal faith thing rather than saying, well, I'm British, so I must be Christian unless I'm. And
lots of people, they will have, they'd have gone to a C of E school. When they get married, we'll do it in a church. It's a nice place to get married, and they may have been christened and the like, but they don't necessarily go to church every week. We have seen certainly Church of England. The evangelical churches like yours have been growing in numbers as the mainstream Church of England has been falling in numbers hugely. Is that because you think that the people have left the church and its values, left Christianity and its values, or has Christianity left them?
I think there's lots of things going on. I don't think the church has left them so much, but I think for some established churches, if you're so like the rest of the world and you're just trying to compete on a sort of an entertainment basis or on a sort of some shared moral value basis, then you're not really very distinctive. So why would you particularly choose the church over some other form of entertainment or being an environmentalist or, following a sport or something?
I was going to say, it seems to me that we've got a new church now, and that is the green cult, which seems to fill a lot of that, the holes that people feel, that vacuum where they feel they need to have that feeling. It seems to me, as someone who's raised an atheist, and I'm raising my daughter as an atheist, church has never appealed to me. I have to say, I sort of think, the idea that I want to go and do that on a Sunday morning, with all due respect to people who are religious, does not appeal to me at all. If I were to be religious, I can understand the appeal, though, of evangelical churches, the singing, the joy, the positivity, that camaraderie. That I can look at the footage from evangelical churches thinking, that looks like fun, and I can see why there would be that appeal. But a lot of people would say, it's very un-British.
You should come to my church, Christchurch, Davis Heath, and it would be fun, even for an atheist. It might be particularly fun for an atheist. But it's interesting you raise your child as an atheist and you are an atheist. So it is a religion as well, atheism, because it's a set of beliefs, isn't it? And a set of moral values. You can't believe nothing. Everybody believes something. Well, you believe God doesn't exist, so you believe something.
I know God doesn't exist. It's not a belief for me. That's for me. That's in the same way that you believe God. You know your heart that God. It's not a belief system for me. I have to say.
Yeah, but I am sad although I think there's all these cultural things going on, which mean it's not dramatically influencing our churches. But I am sad because I think people like yourself and lots of other people should hear more about Jesus and should believe in Jesus, because I think he's the saviour of the world and it'd be great to know him.
Yeah, they always say, was it hell? Was it heaven for the climate, hell for the company? Because a lot of us, it turns out, are going to end up there. Do you think it's an issue less that certain religious groups are going down in this country, say Christianity, but actually we are seeing there's a huge rise in some other religions, particularly Islam, and that's obviously as a result of large numbers of immigrant populations coming from countries which are Islamic. And does that change the values of a country? Because even though raised an atheist, I clearly live in a country that has Judeo-Christian values. We have integration of church and state. Bishops sit in the House of Lords and like. Does that change things if other religions are basically growing?
just to affirm, you are massively influenced by Christian culture, as you recognise, even an atheist. So you don't start from a blank sheet of paper to say, I'm an atheist, what set of values shall I have?
Values in this country are entirely set by those values.
Yeah, which means there probably is some truth in them. But
I love the way you got that in. I love that.
A factor that's happening is lots of immigrant churches, not just other religions, but actually Christians moving to this corridor. I mean, London has massively grown in terms of the numbers of Christians, practicing Christians, but mainly that's because of people moving in from other countries who are Christians already.
Yeah.
And I think that's generally a good thing. It's great for diversity, but it's also great for the Christian faith.
I always wonder when people say it's great for diversity, if diversity is by definition a good thing. I never know whether, I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't know why it's necessarily a good thing.